When you think of American cars, you probably think of cars with big V8 motors that are too big for their own good and that can't go around corners. But you might actually be surprised to know that for a short 4-year period, GM's now defunct Pontiac made a car that was the complete opposite of the typical American land barge. It was even on par with the Miata. I know, that's pretty shocking. That car was the Pontiac Solstice. We start in the year 2002 when Pontiac was showing off its concept for a small two-seater sports car called the Solstice. The concept is pretty similar to the production model from a visual standpoint. They had two different flavors of the car on display. There was a convertible roadster variant as well as a hardtop coupe variant. And after getting quite a bit of attention from the public, Big Daddy GM greenlit the project for production. I can imagine this being a big shock coming from Pontiac, let alone GM, seeing as among the many beige sedans they were making, GM's sportiest car was the Corvette, but the Solstice was something fresh and new, so it should have been a sales success, right? Wrong. Something worth noting is that the Solstice had its own brand new platform to be built on called the Kappa platform. But seeing as this is General Motors we're talking about here, it wasn't entirely brand new. This platform shares a lot of its architecture with the Corvette, which I guess in all honesty is a pretty good thing. The platform is suited for the classic two-seater front-engine rear-wheel drive layout. Debuting in 2006, the base engine was a 2.4-liter four-cylinder which in typical GM fashion is from one of its much lesser cars, in this case from a Chevy Cobalt. It made a slightly underwhelming by American standards of course, 177 horsepower and 173 pound-feet of torque, which gets sent through either a 5-speed manual or automatic transmission. A year later in 2007, a performance variant was available called the Pontiac Solstice GXP, which had a 2-liter 4-cylinder, which compensated for its smaller displacement with a turbo, which took the power from 177 to 260, which is quite an increase. Pontiac designed the Solstice to compete in the same class of cars as the Mercedes SLK and especially the Mazda MX-5, and at the time, the brand new NC 3rd Gen MX-5 was out. Reviewers and consumers were really into the typical Pontiac styling as well as the almost European styling of the Solstice. The handling was on point, and unlike the Miata, you did not have to be a midget to fit inside. It also rode better. And while the Pontiac was also more powerful and cheaper, the MX-5 ultimately had the edge due to being quicker, handling better, and coming with the pedigree of the Miata name. But hear me out. As a person with a bit of a bias towards Euro and Japanese cars, and also considering the fact that Americans have never really tried to make a car like this before, I think they smashed it out of the park. If GM had given it a few more years and a potential mid-cycle refresh, this thing could have been great. But this is a bit of a segue into my next point. GM, especially during this time, was constantly cutting corners and cheaping out on parts due to the 2008 recession and the few years leading up to it. We all know and hate what the recession did to the auto industry, and because of it, GM had to pull the plug on Hummer, Saturn, Saab, and of course Pontiac. And to make things worse, during times of economic hardship, no one was buying cars, let alone sports cars. So, in a last-ditch effort to raise sales, GM engineers threw together the Club Sport Handling Package to celebrate their winning Solstice race car that was entered in the SCCA Showroom Stock B National Championship. For only $2,000 extra, the package added a limited slip differential, stiffer and lower suspension, bigger anti-roll bars, and spool valve dampers, which all sounds great on paper, but they had to add spacers to the suspension because these cars were now far too low to make it across the production line and to make it on and off of the shipping vehicles. However, after shipping, Pontiac didn't even remove the spacers, thus negating any improvements made by the handling package. Unless of course you paid them a little extra to get them removed. Worse still is that Pontiac was not transparent about these being on the cars in the first place, so very few actually got them removed. And it's because of these kind of, well, cost-cutting measures made by GM management that pretty much ruined the entire Club Sport package. It's not like they cheaped out on advertisement though. Imagine this, the year's 2007 and the ultimate summer blockbuster drops. Transformers, directed by Michael Bay, featuring giant robots, badass cars, fight scenes, and more explosions than an actual war zone. In the movie, all of the Autobot characters, with the exception of Optimus Prime, transform into GM vehicles. And one of those Autobots, Jazz, who transformed into a modified Pontiac Solstice, was just so cool. It's because of his character that introduced me to the Solstice when I was little, and it quickly became one of my favorite cars. It's just a shame they had to kill him off.
You want a piece of me? You want a piece? No! I want two!
Oh, what the f***, Megatron?
Now, let's get into the many other versions of this car, because I guarantee you'll be shocked by some of them. The Solstice was rebadged as a Saturn Sky, and in Europe it was called the Opel GT. But here's where things get a little bit weird. In Korea, I shit you not, it was sold as a Daewoo G2X, which is interesting. But there is yet another car that used the Kappa platform. That fourth car is a limited production sports car from Spain called the Toro V8 Spider, which changes up the styling a little bit and uses a bloody 6.2 liter LS3 Corvette engine instead of the original 4-cylinder. That thing must be absolutely mental. But wait.
There's more.
No.
There were even a whole bunch of cancelled GM concepts that were gonna use the Kappa platform, but just never saw the light of day. Starting with the Vauxhall VX Lightning. Dead. This weird Chevy Nomad concept. Dead. This even weirder Saturn Curve concept. Dead. So, in the end, the Solstice was a great car that was hindered by poor sales, bad timing, and living in the shadow of the MX-5 for the entirety of its short life, right up until Big Daddy General Motors pulled the plug on the Pontiac, and many, many more. So, I hope you enjoyed. Remember to like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one.